So why don't we just start off, Clan MacFarlane, what was it all about? 1960s, 70s, early 80s, the heydays of the band. Who wants to start? Mike
Well,
McNeil?
From my perspective, the band started in about 1957, but it wasn't a Clan MacFarlane at that point in time. We didn't have any. And I was out at John Kirkwood's shop one day, and John had come over with a group from the Shots. And I think, Graham, were they not world champions before they came over?
They won the Worlds in
Dick
52.
McPherson brought them over.
Yeah.
And there was a group of pipers from the Black Watch, 4 of them, I believe. One was one of your teachers, Kenny, Davey Dewar,
Yeah.
and Jimmy Gregg, and so on. And I guess a couple of them went back, from what I understand. But the group had been brought over to form a competitive pipe band in the St. Catharines area. And that didn't happen. I guess they were stagnant for a couple of years. And one day that I can remember, John Kirkwood decided that he was going to get this competitive group together again, and or those that he could get together, and start a competitive pipe band. And there was only 6 pipers at that time, all from the surrounding area. And we had no drummers to speak of except Jimmy Kirkwood and John Kirkwood. Jimmy was already playing with a competitive band at that time. He was playing with the Cabaret, if I
Yeah, he played
remember
for
right.
58, 59.
And
yeah.
so Jimmy continued to play with the Cabaret. And Jimmy used to bring down, after we got going, of course, he used to bring down that whole drum section to play with us when we got started. We used to practice at the Remy Armories, the Royal Canadian Electrical and Mechanical Engineers in St. Catharines. And after a period of time, Bob Hayworth, the commanding officer of that group, invited us to join the reserve and become the Remy Pipe Band at that time. That was about 1958. The group, though, was what the Clan MacFarlane was to become. So we continued to be a group of Remy bandsmen for a couple of years. And then John Kirkwood was the pipe major of the group, actually, at that time. But John was a very good player. And John was the pipe major on the condition that Jimmy Gregg was at that time, I think, in Scotland, and his mother was dying, I believe. And when Jimmy came back, he was going to take over the band, and John was going to fall back to the lead tip in the band. And that did happen. When Jimmy came back, Jimmy took over the band, and John fell back. At that point in time, Jimmy Kirkwood came down to the band on a permanent basis, along with Jimmy Agnew, folks like that, and John had an up-and-comer, Johnny, who made the first side section in that band. And I'm getting my head of myself a little bit here, but what happened was we always wanted to be on our own. We didn't want to be part of the Remy. And we had the opportunity to buy equipment, total band equipment from a group in Detroit. I think it was a National Guard group in Detroit. And that came to us by way of, I think Jimmy Geddes or folks of that nature.
Bill Grant had the band at that time,
Okay.
yeah, student of George
So-
Duncan's.
What year was that around?
That was 1960,
Okay.
the early part of 1960. And at that time, we had a meeting and we decided what the name of the band was going to be. And some of us thought that, Clan MacFarlane at that time was a great name for a band and so on. And so the Clan MacFarlane came out because that was the tartan that we wore. That was the tartan that we bought.
So no other reason than just the tartan?
That's exactly right.
Is that right?
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And we got that tartan cheap. We kicked in $50 a piece, and I think it was probably about 18, 19, 20 of us at that point in time, so we're talking about $1,000, for all of that equipment. And we had every uniform in the band at that time, well made, good stuff.
Thomas
Jackie
Gordon
Carey
kilts.
used to get the jackets made at Thompson's,
That's right.
cut back for us, which later on he took the sporns and made them into sealskin sporns and so on and so forth. So it was a homegrown band. There's no doubt about that. And then the very first
Yeah.
competition for the band was Grimsby in 1961, and that's where she really started.
So Kenny, when did you actually join the band?
It was after that time, Grimsby was the start of the competitive time for the band, and that was grade 2, I believe, Mike, right?
Yeah, they called it B grade.
B
at the
grade
time.
at that time.
yeah.
And I joined in 62. I had been taught by Dick McPherson with the old St. Catharines band, the predecessor of this band. That's the band that the Kirkwood drum section came to. And I had waited with the street band for a number of years, and then finally in 62 I went with the band as well. And we were just coming out of grade 2 at that time. And I think 63, 64 was our first time up to grade 1.
So
Yeah.
what were some of the other bands in Ontario that were sort of the dominant competition at
Well, the
that
big
time?
bands in grade 1 at that time were Cabernet, Worcester, 48 Highlanders.
Yeah.
St. Thomas on
Uh,
the scene?
401
St. Thomas Road, you
RCAF.
think? Yeah.
Rockcliffe, wasn't
Rockcliffe,
it?
yeah.
Rockcliffe, yeah. And
St. Thomas,
St. Thomas.
that's correct.
Detroit have a grade 1 band?
Not
That
yet.
came in later on.
Yeah.
Walter
Montreal?
Rose started that teaching
CN,
program later than that,
CNR.
and they
CNR?
became an entity in
No,
the
that was
mid-60s.
Steve McKinnon.
Yeah.
Early 60s, I believe, with 3 bands. I mean, he put out 3 bands. At that time, had become grade 1, 2, and 3, and I don't even know if he possibly had a 4th band in there, but there was 4 bands, or 3 bands rather, that Walter Rose produced out of Detroit.
Right.
And a huge number of great players came from that area, and still today, his legacy is still there today.
So Greg gave way to the pipe majorship in what, 1968?
No, it was later than that.
Is it?
We had some very good years under Jim, winning the North American Championship in 67, 68, and 69. Jim left fundamentally at the end of the 70s season, and the band took the 71 season off. We sort of sat back and regrouped, and we were fortunate. With the regrouping, we got a few new players coming in, and we went back competing in 72.
So it had to regroup because,
Loss of pipe major primarily.
really?
No question about it. And it was a shame because we'd had a good streak going, but that was, and at that time, Gary was in the band, Bob was in the band.
I just started in the fall of
It
70.
was,
Just started,
it was a real sudden departure. Like, we were in practice one day, and I think at the end of the practice, Jim
was
says, by the way, I'm gonna take some time off, or
That's correct.
kind of left
yeah.
it in limbo.
Yeah,
It
It was
did-
in March or April of that year, 71.
it was an,
I don't know,
yeah,
it's-
It was the first year of medleys. I
That is
remember
correct.
Yeah.
and
Because you guys cleaned up in sets, like,
All the time.
yeah.
Didn't we play Brantford that year, and then
No.
that was, didn't we play one contest or
No.
something?
in 71?
No.
No, we
No, I don't
didn't,
think so.
because Jim had departed, and we didn't play any. We took the year off, and we attended all the games.
Four of the side drummers went to play with George Campbell and Oshawa.
That is
At
correct.
the GM band,
Yeah.
Agnew, Johnny,
Donnie Fraser.
Johnny Fraser,
and Graham Perry.
Perry, yeah.
And Alec Price was in
Alec
that
Price
group
was
as
up
well.
there too, yeah.
We had a couple players that had come over from Scotland in the mid-60s, and so this freed them up to go. And the rest of the nucleus of the band stayed together for the 71 season, and we were a very social bunch, so it was no problem. We were all friends. And
Yeah.
then in 72, we went back, and our first contest back was Alma in
Yeah.
72.
Didn't get a prize, didn't get a sausage. Nothing.
No.
2 days in a row.
Yeah, we made up for it at the end.
And
You
so,
and I got dropped, Bob, that's what.
All right. The first win for you guys was Brantford.
Yeah. In 72?
Yeah. That was the first win, and it was like jaws just dropped.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The top band at that time was the Cabernet, the City of Toronto. Very, very good under Chris Anderson. And I can remember Chris saying to us at Coburg that year, he says, it'll just be a matter of time before the band gets back on top. He says, you're doing the right things, and it was a great sort of encouragement coming from a competitor. And that's how things were back then. I don't think you'd get that today, a pat on the back for a job well done, you know. But Chris was very supportive of the band, and that was back in '72.
So what about
There
that?
was an expectancy because prior to Ken taking over, the band in the late '60s was doing extremely well.
Yeah.
That's right.
You know, they had won Maxwell a couple of times, and had done their thing to a great degree before that. So that's why the expectation was there, you know, for the band to come back.
And Jim Gregg never came back. He just sort of, I don't know.
Disappeared.
Jack Gillis bought Greg's pipes.
Yeah.
Okay. So he really gave up.
Oh,
He
on the
taught.
spot.
He
That's
taught
exactly
because he
what
taught my brother.
That night,
Okay.
Yeah.
He never stopped playing. He kept
Yeah.
playing.
He was teaching the duck at the time.
Yeah,
Sorry, who's the dog? Lindsay?
Oh, Lindsay, right?
he taught my brother Lindsay and
The
then
duck,
Todd.
Neil's little brother.
Okay.
Yeah.
Dom.
Yeah.
That's right.
Sorry, we all have other names. So we talk code.
We'll talk about that in a bit. So the game plan for getting back on top, I mean, Bob, Kenny, Mike, what was that? Peter, I mean, was there like, you're modeling yourselves after Shots and Dykehead or Glasgow Police or?
I think
Yeah,
more of a
Muirhead
Glasgow
says-
police, like if we follow Bob's train of thought, is that, they just happened to be at that time coming along so strong and playing so well,
Right.
that that style of music was what we enjoyed more than most. Them and the Muirheads as well. I mean, Muirheads had come through the '70s, the late '60s, early '70s with great playing. That's what we tried to get put in place as far as I could feel.
The shots for the band, that the band was originally modeled after, because of, the players that
Yes,
gave them
yeah,
shots.
the drum section.
And plus the fact that we didn't have the greatest players in the world to start
Right.
off with. I mean, we had a group of players that played very well as a band, and I think that's where the Clan really excelled, no matter what era you're talking about. You're talking about a group of players that played together extremely well. And individually, there are questions, that'll be shot at you from all angles. But as a group, they played extremely well together.
Yeah.
We had just about all Henderson drums, right? So
That's
that
correct.
was a common thing. Sinklers, we were Sinkler chanters. So there's something about that we felt, hey, we've got something here. All these other guys are playing mix and match and all this and that. But we've got Hendersons, we got Sinklers. Let's go.
That's interesting.
Fortunate too that we established some great contacts with Remaking and Tom McAllister Jr.
Mm-hmm.
and George Lumsden for door reeds. These guys were exceptional.
Yeah, McAllister, the McAllister chanter reeds came a little later.
Yeah, that was
right?
'74.
Right.
After '74, we started using them. That kind
That
of
was
gave us another way to.
So did you consider, like, your game plan as far as the instrument and setups, the pipes and setups, was that kind of modeled after what was happening in Scotland, and then therefore, giving you an advantage in Ontario versus the other bands?
I don't think so initially, Andrew. Initially, I think we're flying by the seat of our pants, as our sound in the first couple of contests would have been evidence of it. We were sharp beyond sharp. We were unsettled, and we put our heads together after the first couple of contests and got back and said, we've got to do something about this sound. And we flattened the pitch off for one
Come
thing.
on, Ken, be honest. Noel took you by the scruff of the neck and said, this isn't gonna happen, son.
He's referring to Noel Slagle. He's one of our
Like a
pipe
coup in the
sergeants through the years, and he was a very strong influence on what we were doing, to say the least. And,
Big Daddy.
but then, as the band progressed, and we got our hands on the sound by later on in the summer, we kept that, and then I think our trip to Scotland in '74 was a huge eye-opener. We stayed in Shots for 3 weeks. We befriended Tom McAllister, John, and the reed-making process, and we came back, and we were on McAllister reeds from there on in, and with a lot of assistance from these very good people, and our sound changed dramatically from '74 on. We were playing a lighter ridge-cut reed up until that time. We went into the McAllister reed from there, and the stability came to the band.
Right.
And that lasted for several years. So that takes us through the 70 years that way.